So let's get started with our first insight. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Health Made Simple show. And again, the goal of this podcast, particularly, is to continuously simplify health for us. Health is not complicated. It's very simple. And I say that because the human body was designed to be healthy. And I had to say that because this morning I was listening to a podcast and these two extraordinary, intelligent people were having a conversations back and forth. They went into about this 5-minute dissertation of how complicated health was. And I was so bummed out to hear it because it's not complicated. If we are looking for the latest scientific research that gives the potentiality of a magic wand, yes, that makes it complicated because then we're always trying to one up and this does this and this does that. But the truth is, health is simple. And that's what this podcast is supposed to be all about. All right. So with that being said, let me dive into the clinical insights, hopefully with the intention of literally just making life and health simple again. All right. So number one is a young lady who's been with us for a while. I believe she's probably about 58, a little bit older than I am, in a very interesting situation. She and her friend were both at an event. I think it was a family situation, and they were around a bunch of little kids, and they both ended up with these head colds. And as a result of it, the one girl who's been with me for a long period of time, she had a very strong health approach. And again, it doesn't mean you're never going to catch a cold or get a little bit, worn down or something, but at least you have a strategy. And so she kind of went about her ways. She bumped up her angiographics and her conjuplex, get a little extra sleep, et cetera, when the head cold came about. Her friend, on the other hand, said, why don't you her friend went to the doctor right away. She had a little bit of a sinus infection, went to the doctor and did a very traditional practice where she got a steroid shot and antibiotics. And her friend literally within the day was like, I'm feeling better. Why don't you just do this? Like, just do it this time. We can go do this. We can go do that. And my patient, or that sounds kind of weird, but my client, I guess, decided, no, that's not what I'm gonna do. I'm just going to rest it off. Might take me a couple of days and I'll be better shortly. And it did take a couple of days, never got real bad. I had to take it down a notch, had to put some things on hold. I do less one yes, right? I had to, hey, thank you for the invitation, yet I got to kind of take it down a little bit. I'm not feeling great today. So she does that. 2, 3, 4 days later, she's back in the groove. Ironically enough, her friend, who felt really fast, is still dealing with it now. Because just in this, the point being, listen, I'm not anti-medication, yet I am pro-health always. And our bodies always know what to do if we're listening and we give them an opportunity to heal up. And in this particular scenario, the lady and I were just talking about, it's not bad or good. And the only reason she was able to do that with such confidence is because she practices health. When you start to practice health in your worst moment, very difficult to hold true to those types of values. So if you're out there and you're listening and you are practicing health, it's not that hard for you when you get a little bit of a head cold to say, I'm going to pump the brakes. I know what to do here. I got these herbs. I got these vitamins. I get a little extra sleep. I'll do a sauna session, something, because you practice. So for the other people, it's not always in their best interest the moment they get sick. And that's why practicing health and every little choice that we make, it really does matter. And I say that in twofold. If we make a small compromise on a small thing, what are we going to do when there's a big thing? So when someone says, oh, I wouldn't take a major drug, like I wouldn't take, say, an opioid for pain, but you would take an aspirin for pain. So it means you had a little pain, you take a little bit of something. What if you had a really big pain? There's a good chance if you didn't have other practices in your life, and this could be about pain or anything, in that moment, you would probably do something that's probably not very serving either. So I just throw that out there to give it some consideration. Think about how you're practicing health, and that every decision that you make, every choice that we make, it does move us in the direction to making that choice again down the road. So whatever we're practicing gets easier, not harder.
It really is flexing a muscle, isn't it?
Yes. It really is. It's because it's not always fun.
Yeah, I think it's really To recognize the blessing and the burden is sometimes how I think of it. Like we have all these opportunities to make choices all of the time. And to just introduce the idea that each choice could be like this little practice of health. That's great. And I know we've all been in that spot where we've got that head cold coming and we've got plans for the next day. And it's worth it just to like slow down a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, always not always convenient. I think the the takeaway that in this reel, I really edified the person that was in getting her adjustment today and just said, listen, good for you. This couldn't have happened 3 years ago because you weren't practicing on any level of health. You wouldn't have had any faith. You wouldn't have had any experience in knowing how well your body can heal if you give it a chance. So it was a nice high five moment right there.
That's awesome.
All right, clinical insight number 2. So this is another blood pressure. I feel like I talk about these often, and I don't think I can talk about them often enough. So this individual, a little bit older, right around 80 years old, years young, we'll call it, 80 years young. And she had a bit of a trauma, and as a result of it, ended up in 2 different medical clinics. We count mine would be the third one and she did blood pressure as a screening. So that's very common. You go to the ER, and in the ER, they'll check your blood pressure. Well, when she went to the ER, her blood pressure was 189 over 96. And for everyone, if you're not familiar if that's a good or bad number, that's relatively very high. So that's high. That's alarm phase high. Yeah, 189 beats per minute for someone that's, when we get a little older, we become a little more frail. So we want to be mindful of that. Now, with that being said, so if you're not familiar, an ideal normal is right around 120 over 80. And this number was 189 over, I wrote it down here, over 96. And 120 over 80 would be ideal. So before she came back to my office, I had the opportunity to see her medical records from both clinics. And I noticed the good news that everything else was clear, which was the best news. But I noticed on those both records how high the blood pressures were. So when she got into my office, she actually came in carrying a blood pressure cuff, which I thought was great, because this is where we should be paying attention to this. So I want everyone to listen to this, because in the event, in this very moment, of course, the doctors were suggesting to follow up with your cardiologist, et cetera, et cetera. And it could literally be a rabbit hole here where it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper and causing more and more, unwanted or unneeded, I should say, in this situation, the medical challenges. So first thing I had her do, I said, listen, you're in a trauma. There was literally an accident in this situation. And in the trauma, we have a heightened central nervous system. And the top number responds to our nervous system, especially if we are in fight or flight. And there was no doubt in this situation, there was fight or flight. So that number 189, over the years, I've seen that number drop significantly, as long as we can get the body and the mind back into a much calmer state. So we went through a very systematic sequence that I do, and it's a matter of taking the blood pressure 3 times, and the patient that's sitting there, they don't get to watch the blood pressure cuff. They don't get to see the thing clicking around. They just sit there, and their only goal is breathing. So the first time we don't do it with any breathing exercises, take the blood pressure, here we are. And sure enough, and when I first took hers, oh boy, I think it was still in the 180s. I wrote them down here. I apologize. She was in the 180s over 96. It was almost identical what she saw in the hospital. And then in between there, I relax. I literally have them shake their shoulders. I have them shake their hands, get all the tension out of their physical body, do some breathing in through the nostrils, exhaling slowly through the mouth. And listen, this is all in a short period. Like they coming in for, I don't have an hour with each patient, right? So the other practitioners listening to this, you can do this in your office. You should be doing this in your office, because it's so impactful what took place. So this is all literally in about a 9-minute window here. So have her take a deep breath in. We do the slow exhale. We do that over a course of a minute. So we take the blood pressure, we do breathing for a minute, we retake the blood pressure. It dropped from 189 to 154 the 30-point drop like that in 1 minute. We do the same exercise again with, and it dropped again all the way down. Well, dropped a little bit to 148. So we've now gone from 189 to 148, and that's what, a 40-point drop, 45-point drop. I gave it a couple more minutes. I gave it 2 more minutes of breathing. So I wasn't happy. I wasn't pleased with literally while I was watching the exhales. And that's what's key here, is the slow exhale. When we can control the exhale, we can control the state of the body, specifically the parasympathetic nervous system. When we take a breath and we let it out like that, that is still essentially a fight or flight state. So it was actually coming back on that second round of when I was doing the blood pressure here. We did 2 more minutes of the breathing, and it dropped all the way down to 120.
No way. That's so cool.
Fascinating. So a couple things that were achieved by this. One, that individual, that 80-year-old lady sitting in front of me, had a moment of, whoa, I don't have a cardiovascular issue. I have a stress issue. And many practitioners, those who are out there that are practicing right now, there's something called white coat syndrome. And so this is why I say, if you've ever been to the doctor's office and been diagnosed with high blood pressure, go buy yourself a cuff and go home and practice, seeing what it takes. Make it competitive, make a game out of it, have fun with, to see how calm you can get yourself and see how much you can change that top number. In this scenario, literally in these couple minutes, we dropped it. What's 189 to 120? That's 69 points. Yeah. And then the bottom number dropped from 96 to 81, which is very difficult to drop. That's really the more therapeutically important number. But doing that, all of a sudden she went from a high blood pressure risk scenario to absolutely normal. No follow-up with your doctor, nothing. You had stress-induced high blood pressure. So I'll share those every single time I have them, because I don't think they can be said enough. I can't tell you how many patients I have that are on high blood pressure medications, and I ask them when they went on them and why they went on them. And they say, well, I went to the doctor one time, blah, 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 blah. Had nothing to do with their heart. They were stressed, someone was sick, or they were ill, and they took their blood pressure, and doctor said, you should probably go on this. And 10 years later, they're still on it. I've never had a conversation again about it. So that's for all of you that are out there listening. That might be you. Blood pressure, because the heart is a muscle, is something that we can have a great impact on. All right.
Let me just say, the idea of having fun and making a game out of using a blood pressure cuff is pretty revolutionary, Bart. So many of us are only presented with that cuff in scenarios where we feel a little apprehensive, and to take something like that and kind of convert it into a health practice as well. It's great.
Yes. Well, you're very familiar with my wife, correct?
I am, yes.
And there might have been a time in our lives, my wife and I, that we might have both been very competitive. And when it comes to those kind of fun things, and seeing and using different breaths and using different, acupuncture points and whatnot to really see. And that, man, I didn't even pull out the needles in that one. If that would have taken it to a whole nother level, because acupuncture is amazing what its impact on blood pressure. So in our house, we've had that fun before of just literally watching how much we can regulate and get our blood pressure and even our heart rates down by just really controlling breath, which then can help control where our mind is at. So when you're focused on breath, you're not focused on the other stuff. That's the beauty of it. That's, when people say, well, I can't focus. Well, just focus on your breath then. Then that becomes a wonderful thing to focus on. So always love sharing those, because I always feel like that gives someone some insight or some hope that they probably can do something about the situation that they're in.
That's really fantastic, and something we can use straight away. Even now, like as you're speaking this, I'm like taking deeper breaths with longer exhales.
Yeah. I'll share a little offbeat here, but I was doing an acupuncture session a little later in the afternoon today. And usually when they're lying there, before I really start engaging with the needles, I'll make an observation of their breathing patterns. And the individual that was lying down, they're lying on their back, or what we call a supine position. And it was very obvious that they weren't really in a nice, relaxed breathing pattern. They were still in the busyness of the day. And again, practitioners, listen, this is our job to sometimes wait and pause. I had an option with, and you know, sometimes I get behind in my clinic. We get behind, and there's people out there waiting. And so we're so blessed because our people are so generous with being patient. So this was a situation where she was in sympathetic dominance, and I could have just put the needles in and left. But my brain said, I can't do it. Like, if I give her an opportunity to shift that, this whole experience will be a worldly different experience. Meaning, if I get her to breathe 1 or 2 good breaths before I do my therapy or do my treatment with the needles, it's a whole different world. So I waited with her for a little bit, and we went through some abdominal breathing, and it took probably 2 additional minutes. Doesn't seem like much, but it's extra time. Relaxed. Sure enough, I did a real nice yin protocol, and she basically slept for 30 minutes, which is beautiful.
What a gift. What a
Yeah,
beautiful thing.
was not going to happen if I just put those needles in. Would have been an entirely different experience. All right. That had nothing to do with the 4 I want to share tonight. So anyways, but that's real. That should be part of, you know, as practitioners, that should be part of the practice that we have. It doesn't always go perfect, doesn't always go to schedule. Rarely goes to schedule. We have a plan every morning as a crew. We have a plan. We have it mapped out and it looks good. And then something changes in between. All right. So third one I want to share with you is this gentleman, about 46 years old, getting up there in weight. Definitely he's put on, you know, the extra 5 to 10, probably over the last 10 years. And he's probably 30 to 40 pounds more than he would be in a really healthy state. Anyways, he came in, I could tell he was kind of down. I know his wife, she had been trying to get him in there for a little bit. And I could tell just his general demeanor. And he's a big husky guy. Like, you tell he's just a big, strong man. Yet I could tell he was also a little weakened by the state he was in emotionally. And he basically, he'd almost given up. He said, Doc, I've waited too long. So I've had this back problem for a long time. My wife's been telling me I need to come in here and take care of this. And it's like, now, like, my back goes out every other week to the point where I can't move for 3-4 days at a time. He's like, and I'm losing out on work. I can't get to my job sites, and, you know, all of it. And I could just see the kind of despair on his face. And ironically enough, and this goes in 2 different directions, which is interesting. The wife really wanted him to come see me to maybe guide him along some better health choices, specifically around alcohol. And yes, I'm always glad to go in that conversation, but there's a time and a place for that. And this was neither the time nor the place in this particular moment. A lot of pain, a lot of kind of just bummed out. And he kind of thinking, I'm an old man at 46. So this is where sometimes just starting simple and easy is important. And that's where we have to start. So this guy, big guy, kind of down in the dumps a little bit. I get him to lie down, and I really gave him the idea, hey, listen, don't worry about it. Put all that aside. You're here. Now is the time we start to get better. So I've talked a lot of it out here on the Health Made Simple show that there's basically 3 things, and you want to be able to take baby steps with either one of these: how you move, how you eat, and how you think. And by improving any one of those, you will improve the others. So if you're not really good with your thinking, let's just say you're down a little bit, maybe you just get your body moving a little better. So in this scenario, that was my approach with him. How can I get him moving just a little bit better? The beauty is I had him right in front of me. So I knew by getting my hands on him, giving some adjustments, we'll get some tension off of the spine. And my goodness, this dude was like a brick. Like, literally, like, his spine, his back muscles were so guarded, so uptight. It was like a brick. And then, believe it or not, in those scenarios, people would say, is it hard to adjust them like that one? In those scenarios, you don't match force with force. You go backwards. It's lighter touch. It's easier. It's softer. It's gentler, because it's already been super, super hard. So in this scenario, I said, yeah, we're going to lie down and get some pressure off the nerves, let these muscles start to relax. And just by saying, I got this, we have a plan, you could see some of the tension already leaving, like, his body. It was quite fascinating. And he was still like, I'm so far behind. I said, no big deal. So then the simple part of this is that I sent him in the direction of doing the spinal flow. So if you're listening, you're going, what is a spinal flow? On our website at balance38.com, maybe putting a link for this for anyone. If you're not moving good or you just want to move better in life, this is how I've healed my spine over the years. Yes, I do a lot of things, chiropractic and yoga, but this is a ritual that I use every single morning. It takes about 2 minutes in the morning. So now he knew that he has something to only take him 2 minutes. And the doctor standing in front of him told him, I guarantee you that if you do this every morning, you will move better in a week than you do today. And I stand by that. He will move better in a week from today than he does today. So I gave him an adjustment, felt great. And then we had the conversation. All right, how about how we eat? So, and that's where we can throw in like, what can we make for simple improvements? Yes. Is alcohol part of this and a big part of the problem? Probably. If we go there first, we're probably going to lose the whole situation. So we just went after reducing sugar. And that was a no-brainer because everybody knows you're supposed to reduce sugar. And if we reduce sugar, we reduce pain. And because sugar is literally like putting fire on top of your arthritis. So got him moving a little better with the spinal flow, got some sugar out of his diet, got his adjustments going, and then just giving him direction. And this is why, folks, I can't say this enough. Having accountability or having a strategy, and that might come from your doctor, might come from your health coach, whoever it may be, but having a strategy that you clearly understand where you're headed is critical for the mind when it comes to your health. If you wake up every day thinking I'm just getting older, that's not good for the mind. It's not super healthy. So in this situation, literally that big dude at 200 and probably, I don't know, say 50 pounds or so, I think he was floating out of there. It was really fun to watch. Wait, you back?
I'm back. Keep going.
Okay. When did you catch me last?
We're about halfway through.
Okay. So I was still talking about that gentleman. So long story short there, I gave him really three.
We were on sugar is where I was. Go ahead.
So we went through kind of a phase of a real simple instructions, and starting simple is important, especially if you really feel like yourself or someone else has gone over to, like, they're on a downward slide and the trajectory is going down, not up. And this is also for your friends and family. Sometimes going after their absolute worst vice is such a mountain to climb, you can't do it, and nor can they. So in this situation, it was the wife really wanted me to help with the alcohol, and I will. As we build up trust and we build up success with the small things, because small things lead to big things, we will get there. And what I think we just got cut off there, but yet what I found with this gentleman is literally when he was leaving 250 pounds, I think he was floating, like literally just floating out of there. He felt better. And part of it is definitely mental and emotional because he now has a strategy. In that part, I don't know if you caught me saying that part, but that part is for all of us. Having a strategy with your health that's favorable, meaning not just wait and see, not I'm going to ignore it today, or you wake up and just feeling a little bit older tomorrow, but having a strategy where you're going, how are you going to stay at your ideal weight? How are you going to stay a little fitter this year? How are you going to go through the holidays? Holidays are coming up. This is the most destructive part of human health here in our country, starting October 31st. It's right around, that's 2 weeks away, right? October 31st to January 1st are the most destructive days in terms of human health in our country. And it happens every single year and it keeps happening. So we're going to start having this conversation, I guess, right now, that we have to allow ourselves to go, oh, I know what happens. I get very emotional. I start to eat a lot. I start to drink a lot, and I start to get busy a lot and all those kind of things. So having a strategy is a huge part of us moving forward with our health. And I saw with this guy right away, just like that. Man, I wish, I don't know if I could put it in words or he could have, just how much better he felt. And yes, he's still like a low back that was very tight and sore, but just knowing that we were going to move forward. And then I had a sidebar conversation with the wife and I said, yes, we did not talk about the alcohol, and she understood. I said, right now, we just got to make him feel a little better about himself, a little better about the body he's in, and knowing that he's not done. He's not done at 46 years old. So super great, visit right there. And again, for anyone who thinks they've gone too far, you're not. You're not too far. There's always an opportunity, no matter how much pain, like let's say you have a musculoskeletal issue, how much you can't bend over. Literally, this guy couldn't put his own shoes on anymore. So literally, he thought that like he'd gone too far and there was no fixing him. And there's always, as long as you have the willingness to take some action for your health, that's the moment that you start getting better. So action is always a beautiful part of medicine. Is a beautiful medicine, I should say. All right.
I
Next
think,
one.
okay, but let me just say, people in those scenarios, man, that inspires me so much because that is an action taking, showing up at that office today and just putting his care into like, okay, I'm gonna like look at this right now. We're gonna talk about it. That's so powerful.
It really
Step
is.
one is like the biggest one.
Yeah, and I really give him a lot of credit too, because it was a very humbling moment. So there's two guys sitting in a room, and I could tell, like sort of like welling up with little like tears in his eyes. And he's a big, like manly man, saying, "Man, I think I've gone too far." And the other practitioners know this as well. No, as long as you're there, as long as you're doing something, there's an opportunity to get better. And don't give up on any one of your friends or your family, not because of their age, not because of their previous diagnosis or the condition that they're in. Don't give up on humans, because there's nothing more miraculous than this thing we call these bodies, because the power that made the body heals the body. And it always happens that way. And sometimes we just have to get out of the way and let things flow. So super, super awesome moment. One of those things one of those weird things. People ask me all the time, like, you've been doing this for 25 years, you'll still enjoy it? And when those moments are, yes. Like I enjoy the moments we're in the office, right? Like we have good times. We're serving people and we got dogs and we got food, and we're like, it's just like an ongoing party over there, which is great.
Yeah, we have a really good time there. Plus yoga music. It's great.
Plus yoga music, yes. All right, let me give you the last one. Speaking of parties and whatnot. So pretty consistently when someone walks through the door, so everyone listening, any of that walked in and I see you as a patient, I'll say something like this: Whit, nice to see you. You've been taking good care of yourself. And I pause. If you're kind of confused, then I'll be like, you clean living, you're getting your body moving, you're putting a smile on your face. And that's pretty repetitive for me. So if you recorded me all day long, I'm probably saying that 20, 30 times or more, very similar to that. Now, today I heard on more than one occasion, I think I heard it 3 times. And this is what I'll hear moving forward into these holidays, even more and more. I hear this all the time during the summer and everything. And it is, well, I had friends in town. And that right there sets the stage. So, and then I usually say, what does that mean? You had friends in town. And then they'll say, and I usually do a little flip on them. I say, no, I don't know, because I know what happens when my friends come in town. Tell me what happens when your friends come in town. And I think everyone knows what I mean. So they get off track, they get derailed. So I want to comment on that, because there's always going to be friends in town. There's always going to be a birthday. There's always going to be a holiday. There's always going to be an office party. There's always going to be an event. And if you live down here at the beach, you always got friends coming to town. And there's always a sunset. So at some point on our health journey, it's almost, you can tell where you are in your health journey, quite frankly, when you have friends in town and you're not derailed.
That is a powerful moment, isn't it? Your ritual is set.
Yeah. So I can give a personal kind of experience there. So in the past, when I would travel and I would go see my family, when I wasn't as anchored in my rituals, I guess, if you want to call them, or just really comfortable with what and who I am and what I'm doing, on a daily basis, feed my body to move. In the past, I would go and I'd slip and I'd slide and be like, well, I was traveling, I was visiting family, and maybe some alcohol would sneak in or something. And now it doesn't. And no big deal. It's not because I made them into bad guys and I'm the good guy. No, it's just more about where I am on my health journey. And so if you find yourself continuously saying, well, friends were in town, and those things keep popping up, I'm going to keep challenging you to keep allowing yourself to recognize that conversation. Because if you can get bumped off by something simple, imagine what happens when something big happens. And that's why the challenge is there. Because, not to be a naysayer, but we are all going to face something big. And how we handle the little things is a mirror image of how we're going to handle the big things. So I'll encourage everyone to, if you're saying that little bit, my friends were in town, keep getting a little stronger. Maybe you say, all right, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have it all out on Friday night, but those other nights I'm keeping it cool, whatever it may be. And that being said, listen, Thanksgiving, Halloween, New Year's, Christmas, all of them are coming. Cleanse is coming too in January. So I know that's a backdrop, but let's continue to do our best we can so we don't, so we get to level up and not just catch up when the cleanse comes this time.
That is beautiful. Well, obviously I can't wait for the cleanse and I think it's exciting we get to start talking about it. But that opportunity, just every choice, we get stronger. We get stronger every time.
Yes. All right. I just chewed up a lot of time there. I know that. So anyways, let's dive in. I want to share a little bit about some adaptogen herbs, create a little clarity about what are adaptogen herbs? Why do we hear about them so much? Why are they so popular? Why are so many practitioners using them? Why have they been around for thousands and thousands of years? What kind of results can you get? Are they safe? And what does it really mean to have them? So what I'll do is, if time permits, I'll go through more or less what I think would be the single best adaptogen herb, which isn't fair because adaptogen you can use so many different ones, but I'll throw out what I probably use the most common when it comes to skin, the most common when it comes to the immune system, the most common when it comes to, what else is there? Sleep, and the most common when it comes to the mind. Okay. All right.
Beautiful.
So
we're going to get there. We can do it.
We'll get there. All right. So let me get rolling here. Let's just talk about what is an adaptogen herb. So an adaptogen herb is any herbal compound that helps the body adapt to stress. That's the simple, like one sentence, easy does it kind of answer. An adaptogen herb helps you manage stress, any type of stress, chemical stress, our inflammatory response, it be emotional stress, chemical stress, spiritual stress, whatever it may be. But any herb that its job and what it does is help you to manage stress. Now, here's the fascinating thing about that management. It doesn't matter if it's too much or too little. The same herb can help if you're having an over response or an under response. And this has been one of the magics of, if you want to call them plant medicines, over all these thousands of years. So if someone wanted to sleep because they're too wound up, or they wanted to have better stamina because they're too low in energy, they might use the exact same herb to calm down and rev up. And that's what adaptogens can do. But they're all, an adaptogen herb means that it helps manage stress in the body, which is pretty cool. All right. So I was going to have one of the topics just be like, what's the best one to manage stress? But I would have to list all of them. And there's roughly about 20 adaptogens, yet many herbs fill that definition of helping the body manage stress. So let's dive right in. And so it's a couple things. One, these adaptogens increase your body's resistance to stress. So using over periods of time, you get better, you increase your capacity to handle and manage more stress, which is awesome. Another thing I want to manage about herbals and adaptogens, they're safe. They're so well studied and they're safe. When it comes to our needs, so there's two parts that make adaptogens extremely valuable and effective, and is getting your dosing right, and that's where you get with your practitioner, and they can help you with dosing, and of course quality is king always, and also allowing for time. And there's when you study herbs, and listen, you don't have to be an herbologist. That's another takeaway I want everyone to take away. If I'm going to list a bunch of different herbs tonight, and if you just started toying with them, you'd be fine. You'd be better. You do not need to be an herbologist in order to effectively use herbs. You can certainly streamline it when you practice, like someone like myself. I use herbs all day long. We blend. They're super, super big part of our practice and helping people get results. But at the same time, do not be afraid of them. They are safe. Where we get into trouble when it comes to safety for the most part with, and again, I'm going to tell you always, check with your practitioner or cross-reference it. And there's so many cross-references, you can literally Google things if you use medications, is when we sacrifice speed. So speed is an interesting element when it comes to healing. If we increase the speed, we're often decreasing safety. So for example,
bit of an exchange. Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit of an exchange, and that's about as honest as it gets. So when you increase the speed of how fast you get out of pain, most likely you've decreased your safety. There's probably going to be a very big group of side effects, or a very well-known type of side effects. Maybe an aspirin affects your stomach, whatever it may be, or an opioid, all kinds of different stuff. And that can go for anything. Anytime speed is the major component, we're always going to run into a little bit of problem. Anytime you're going to use an adaptogen herb, and remember, the longer you use them, the more effective they become, but always give yourself at least 60 days. Now, we know through clinical results, there are certain herbs we're going to talk about, one being ashwagandha tonight, that they're very effective very quickly without sacrificing any level of safety. The longevity of them to be effective over the long haul is to use them over the long haul. And I'll get into that when we talk about the mind in just a moment. So you might use them, but if you take them away, they go away. The effects go away. So you might need to stay on them to make the changes more permanent and long lasting. All right. Was that simple?
I think we got, that adaptogen herbs help us adapt to stress, and they are safe. They come from God's garden, right?
Yes,
they're literally like grown in the garden.
Yep.
You've seen these gardens that some of these herbs come from.
Yep. They are always non-toxic. That's another bonus, right? Versus if we're trying to compare herbs versus medicine, which is not really what I'm trying to do, but they're non-toxic. They're safe long-term. Everyone that I'll talk about tonight, there are long-term studies of people using them for a lifetime. So for example, I'll just throw one out there. Turmeric is an adaptogen herb. One of the reasons it's such a hot, if you want to call it, is so profoundly important is because over in India, they've been using it for their entire lives. And they study their inflammatory markers and go, wait a minute, why don't we do some of this? So the longer as individuals we use turmeric, the more down regulation of inflammation we get. And it also works like on obesity and stuff like that. So super, super cool stuff. All right. And it's always balancing the body's effort to be better. That's an important component right there. Just like I said, health is simple because the body's designed to be healthy. An adaptogen herb is always balancing the efforts to make the body better. So now let me throw out some of my kind of favorites. And there's like a long list, but nonetheless, I'm gonna narrow it semi down to just a couple here. All right, we'll dive into to skin first. And I'm gonna talk about an herb that probably of this group tonight that I'm gonna talk about is the least known, and it's called Gotu Kola. I've spoken about it here on the Health Made Simple podcast. Gotu Kola is probably my absolute favorite when it comes to anything skin, whether it be psoriasis or eczema, or your skin is getting thin, or you've had surgery, you've torn your Achilles tendon, you have a pulled muscle. Anything to do with skin, Gotu Kola is phenomenal for connective tissue. We did a deep dive on it. So again, all adaptogen herbs help the body manage stress. So we see in some of the newer studies with Gotu Kola, the impact and positive effects on brain health, which is pretty fascinating. But Gotu Kola is probably my single most effective in terms of skin. I've shared with you here on the podcast how over time, between being a little bit worn down, my adrenals, not having enough good full enzymes of vitamin C. So when I was doing martial arts and sparring a lot, I started to cut really easy. Not because I was getting hit real hard, but just the glove would cut and it would, scrape my skin and it would cut it because my skin was getting thinner and thinner. And I used a combination of bumping up my Cataplex C, which we'll talk a little bit about because it's always good to stack these different herbs, using Cataplex C with Gotu Kola. And my skin is definitely thicker now. I know this for a fact because every weekend I play in pricker bushes. Yes. Every single
the farm
weekend.
life.
of the farm life. Exactly. So, and it's one of those things I look and I'm like, wow, a couple of years back, this would have ripped me up. And now, yeah, I still I'm still I've cut some scrapes all over me, but they're not nearly what they would have been. And they heal a lot faster. So I love it for anything surgical, anything that's you do, anything when it comes to increasing or repairing connective tissue, scars, etc. Gotu-kola is my guy. And those are cosmetic ones as well. So maybe you had an elective surgery. Gotu-kola is still my favorite to kind of post-surgical.
And is that not Gotu-kola the one that we sometimes call Botox in a bottle?
Yes, that's exactly the one. So that's its kind of street name. It's Botox in a bottle because it helps that connective tissue get a little stronger and a little tighter. So that's number one. I want to dive into the immune system, and there's some other great ones. And if I was going to stack that, the Gotu-kola, when I say stack, is that many herbs, they're very synergistic with other things, maybe other herbs, but also pairing them. And this is where your practitioner can really help you that's been practicing with vitamins, minerals, and herbs. We can pair them and almost feed those herbs and feed the body to have even a better impact on its function. So I love pairing this one, especially when it comes to skin. I use something called Cataplex C. And if you happen to bruise easily, or when you're doing your gum, like you're flossing and you're seeing like a lot of pink and your gums are bleeding frequently, I use another product called Cyruta Plus. And that's basically like your C enzymes on steroids, which is awesome. It's just like a concentrated version of your vitamin C. And those two go great with Gotu-kola to strengthen the connective tissue. Love them. All right. So now we good there?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so let's slide over to the immune system. And there's so many things. Just in general, if you used any adaptogen herb and you decrease stress, you're going to have a positive impact on the immune system. But there's two specifically I want to speak to here. One is holy basil. Holy basil, right now, I think it's actually like the second or third most Googled herb for some reason, which is really interesting. I don't know why that is. A lot of us that practice with it, if you've been using holy basil for a long period of time, it's also called Tulsi. Yet this is a phenomenal herb. Head colds, it's antiviral. So if you got like a cold, whatnot, it helps reduce fever. Phenomenal herb, especially when paired with this other one, which is really one of my absolute favorites, and it's echinacea. Echinacea, when taken from the right parts, the predominant part of the echinacea that's most effective is the part that comes from the root. And the company I use, MediHerb, they do a combination. So they keep the whole plant intact. They use the root and a little bit of the leaf. And they have worked on that formula for decades to come up with the strongest, most powerful and effective source of echinacea possible. And I want to kind of tout this for a second. And there's plenty of clinical research on this. One of the things that's absolutely fascinating is that it increases the amount of white blood cells available and their action. That, folks, that is what you want if you feel as if your immune system's being challenged. If you are fighting off a cold, if you are fighting off a virus, you want increased soldiers that are out there kicking ass. And echinacea is considered an immune modulator, meaning if your immune system's overdriven, like you're getting a hyperimmune system, almost like an autoimmune system, go backfiring on you, you can use echinacea. If it's weak, you can use echinacea. And one of the really cool things, I remember learning this, I don't know, maybe over a decade ago, that it goes through this process called phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is a fancy scientific word for meaning that it goes around and your body gobbles up the bad guys. Okay. I always have this vision of like Pac-Man. For those of you that are old enough to remember what Pac-Man was like, and it went wobble, 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 and it would go around and eat up the little things, right? That's what your cells do, the white blood cells. So it increases that part of your white blood cell system that goes after the bad guys, that goes after those viral parts of different species. So it goes after and gobbles this up. So it increases the phagocytosis of the cell. So that, for that reason alone, it is still one of my favorite herbs out there when it comes to the immune system. Now, that being said, often I mentioned that stacking herbs, bringing them together, are some of the most effective things you can do. So echinacea with holy basil, with some andrographis, which is another herb, those three are the single best home run when it comes to activating and modulating your immune system, literally getting your white blood cells on board and going kicking some ass. We have a product that puts all three of those together. And there might be other companies that do it as well, but I know we have one that put all three of those together, and it is literally the home run. It's called andrographis complex, and it has holy basil, andrographis, and echinacea. That is the one that every single one of us should have on our home health medicine cabinet and or in our purse.
And so would you find if you were using andrographis complex for like an immune standpoint, are there other like whole food supplements that you might stack with it to really give like that white blood cell fighter chance?
Yeah, so that that's a great question. And really, what we would do then is then how could we feed the body that feeds the white blood cells? So the way we want to think of this. I have all right. I'm going to increase my army, and I'm going to get them all fired up. But why don't I feed the army so they stay strong? And that's where. So there's another product we use called Conjuplex, which is also a stacked. It's really what we call a stacked supplement, meaning that there's multiple things in there. There's calcium, there's vitamin C, there's a little RNA, there's a little support for the spleen in there. So there's amazing things taking place in that product. Thymus gland, not spleen, thymus, which is where a lot of the white blood cells come from. So those two together. So we're going to feed the body and we're going to activate it through those different adaptogen herbs. And you really have a home run sitting right there on your home health cabinet. So it's Conjuplex and andrographis complex. Absolutely phenomenal. That is the one. And we've talked about that before here, where if you're traveling, that's what you bring with you. If you have a home medicine, health medicine cabinet, that's what you put on that thing. And so again, what's even more neat about it is like holy basil and andrographis, they're both antiviral and antifungal. Huge. So we're talking about gut health. We're talking about viruses. We're talking about so many different things that we are going to be exposed to on a regular basis. I speak here all the time about being that probably 95% or more of us have antibodies to the Epstein-Barr virus, which means the Epstein-Barr virus is in your body right now. Using something like echinacea keeps it where it's supposed to be, dormant. And that's the beauty. So you can use it daily if you want. And there's like other products, you can just get echinacea. So those right there for immune system, absolute home runs.
That's so fantastic. And I do have to say, I have seen holy basil. I have smelled it. I have touched it. It is a beautiful plant. We know what echinacea looks like. I haven't had a chance to see gotu-kola yet, but I love the idea that these herbs going into my body, like they're actually beautiful kind of on the outside. They're not kind of like being cooked up somewhere in like a, I don't know, shiny lab or something.
Yeah, that was one of the most impressionable things through my journey of, really starting to use vitamins and whole food nutrients and whole foods, quite frankly, to feed and serve and be medicinal for the body is when I went to the farms. And to literally, I no joke, I literally watch them on the back of this like tour, on this back of this trailer, and we're watching them till it and kind of, I guess, I don't think that's what they call it, but they're digging up the plants and they're chucking them in the back of this truck. And then the truck drives up to the plant. We're talking about within minutes. When we talk farm to table, within minutes from going from the farm to being processed. And it was like this 30-foot long, 20-foot high, what looked to be like a wheatgrass machine. Like it just squeezed all the juices out. That's what it was doing. But it was like this big, monstrous, almost, just huge thing. I was like, oh my God, I'm in heaven right now. And it was absolutely fascinating to watch the process that they've put in place from farm to bottle. So instead of farm to table, but farm to bottle. And then you get to literally go inside and follow that. Those plants get turned into a vitamin that kicks out at the end of the process into a bottle of a bunch of vitamins that serves and, feeds the human body. So to your point, when you see sometimes those amazing things that, our creator put on this earth, and for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine, thousands of years in Chinese medicine. That was medicine. And today, and still to this day, it is. It's not like it went away, but to this day it is. And so, and we've really, at this point, it's been easier and easier for us. All right, we got to keep going before we run out of time. All right.
We sure do.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about one for the mind here. So there are so many. And again, all adaptogen herbs, gotu-kola, rhodiola, licorice root, astragalus, ginseng, both Asian and American, Indian, all of those are adaptogen herbs. Any one of them that you take, what else? Turmeric, shishandra, so many that we could take. Rhodiola, if I didn't mention that, they're all adaptogens. So they all help us manage stress. So they would all help with the mind. So for example, rhodiola might be one of the absolute best for people who are fatigued, especially due to stress. If you put rhodiola with ginseng, and those two, because they're so good at helping create vitality and strength in the body, for people that are chronically fatigued, that might be the best. And that's a great pairing right there, rhodiola and ginseng. If someone has emotionally distraught, they've gone through a divorce, loss of a loved one, their finances has changed, they've moved several times, there's another blend, rhodiola and shishandra, because it helps purge the liver. And whenever we're holding on to stuff, goes to the liver. So there's so many uses that just happens to be another formula I use a lot, especially in my acupuncture approach, is rhodiola and shishandra. So because it's so good for the liver, and so much of acupuncture goes into enhancing the liver function. So this one, let's talk about the mind for a second. If I had to be held accountable for picking one that I think would be the best for overall mind health, it would be ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, tough one to spell, which is fascinating because it's the number one Googled herb right there. So always, there must be a lot of misspellings going on there. And it really crosses the bridge on so many things. We talked a couple of weeks ago, I had Dr. Hogshead talk about, and we were talking about ashwagandha's effect on testosterone levels to help increase them. It's clinically known to help people with hypothyroidism, which is amazing. So it's almost always part of my thyroid protocols. Very little known fact, it actually has a good source of plant iron in it. So it can help. Now picture someone has thyroid and maybe they're a little bit anemic, which often will happen hand in hand. We can take one herb that increases thyroid function and also gives them a natural source of iron, which is fantastic. It's probably the single best for calming the mind. And this is really over these last couple of years where it's been so kind of crazy, I guess, or we just heightened senses for everything. Ashwagandha has really been a big help for our clinic, along with the one I'm going to talk about next with sleep. But if there's a go-to, if I just wanted to know that I could have an impact, a positive impact on someone, I could just give them ashwagandha. Anxiety, fatigue, calming the mind when you have what I call mind chatter or even brain fog, either direction. Ashwagandha, very calming. If you get too much going on, you're down a little bit, it can help pick you up. So that's a good example where it could be too much or too little. And because it's an adaptogen herb, it helps the body become a better version of itself. That's one of the absolute fantastics there. Stacking this one with, I typically use, there'd be two things I would use. My favorite is something called min checks. Minerals, again, this is about feeding the body. And then the herbs get to help the body increase actions by helping them adapt to the different stresses. But min checks, often when we're under emotional duress, especially over any type of period of time, we burn up or get rid of a lot of our minerals. Because often, quite frankly, with that comes, less than great food choices, and stress burns up things like magnesium and sugar does and all that stuff. So min checks is a great pairing with this. When I use min checks and ashwagandha together, literally people start to feel good within the night or the next day or days. Now, even though that happens, I'm going to encourage you, if you have that impact, stay on it. You don't need a high dose. You can use this where you want to talk to your practitioner. And again, even if you didn't, you'd still be okay just using ashwagandha. Getting a high quality source, absolutely critical in this moment. We use one called ashwagandha forte, and it's 400 milligrams per pill, which is huge. And I use it clinically to have that impact where we know we need to make change. We know that the mind's moving in a direction that's not serving it, and it's having an impact on the body. So this is even for the hypoimmune systems, where the stress is now the causation of the immune system dropping. Ashwagandha is phenomenal for that. So in there, we'll go anywhere from one of those pills twice a day to two of them 3 times a day, depending on the situation. So I'm comfortable. I've seen we've ramped those up. In fact, actually, I've done 2-4 times a day for some people. There's no need to stay on that heavy of a dose because you simply won't utilize it all. But it's certainly, I'm just saying it's safe. And with ashwagandha, you can really enhance, especially if you're going through stuff. Maybe you got a new job, maybe you've moved, maybe you're just going through a breakup, maybe you're going through some hormonal changes. Staying on a lower dose, 1 or 2 tablets a day for 30, 60, 90 days at a time, or maybe long, maybe a year or two at a time. Women in perimenopause, you might be in perimenopause for 10 years. So using something that keeps your mind in the game could be your absolute best friend.
Beautiful. So we have got ashwagandha for the mind. We've got for the immune system, little andrographis, basil magic with echinacea. We said for the skin, go to cola. So is there something for sleep in the herbal component from this wonderful world of 20 plus adaptogens?
Yes, I'll throw it out there. So again, kava might not fall into the category of a classical adaptogen, yet it works as a modulator. And the beauty, this is my favorite, when it comes to sleep, if you want to shift how you're feeling and really help your body unwind, it induces sleepiness. That's what we need to know. And there's details of how and why that works. It helps your body get out of this fight or flight state, relax, and shift into parasympathetic activity. But if you read up on it, you'll see that its key component is that it induces sleepiness or calming the body down. Another fascinating thing about this, it's phenomenal for chronic pain in the body. A lot of the pain that we carry around is stress induced because the body stays wound up. It never gets into a healing state. We forget that all the time about chronic pain, like necks and backs and stuff, that we never really get into a mode where the body can heal. So in heavier doses, here's where it gets really fun. Well, maybe this will be a different conversation, but it works as an aphrodisiac. It can literally be a nootropic. So there's very common, and I think you're going to start. I'm certain you're going to start to see more and more popularity to kava bars. And if they're not just kava bars, because it came up years ago, you're going to start to see different environments, spas and settings and social settings, maybe in yoga studios, where people are going to have access to kava drinks, kava tablets, because it really takes some of the barrier off without the hangover, without the side effects. It's not a psychedelic, but it gives the body an opportunity to unwind and enter more of a state that your body can start to produce dopamine. And dopamine is what that all of those things are seeking whether you're doing drugs or eating more food, they seek that opportunity where your body releases a little dopamine so you feel wonderful. And kava in higher doses, and just real quick note, inevitably someone will Google it and they'll see something that says you got to be careful with kava because of its impact on the liver. And that research was done on synthetic forms of kava. Kava has been literally used for, I think it's like 3,000 years. It comes out of, I think, the Pacific Islands. It's a very, very delicate little herb that needs to be harvested for about 3 to 7 years before it can come into a usable supplement source. So it's been around for literally thousands of years and used very, very safely. So for the mind and for the body, phenomenal. And I say mind and body there. With the chronic pain, I'm using it more and more for people, especially when they say, I wake up with pain. Kava's phenomenal for that. And what, your screen went blank or solid on me here again? Well, I lost Whitney. Don't know where she went. But anyways, for the last little bit of that, I don't know if we're still recording here, but the beauty. Did I lose you again, Whit?
I just took a little trip down the street. Now I'm back.
All right, great, great. I'm not sure if the audience heard everything I said. I think so, but I was just kind of wrapping up on kava, saying that in the event that you or someone you know, they wake up with pain, it's one of my favorite uses and very, very effective use, because we know that that's almost that chronic pain where the tension's building up in the body and you hold the tension through the night and you wake up in pain. So kava can be phenomenal for that. And again, if you use too much of it, you might just be really laid back, chilling out, having a good time. So again, to my starting point here, these adaptogen herbs, they've been around for thousands of years. They're safe. They're effective. You don't have to be a herbologist. I'm telling you to get with your practitioner, someone that like myself, that maybe you've just really used them enough to know how to fine tune it. But even if you didn't, and you just wanted to play around with them, send any adaptogen herb that you take, find a good quality source of it, take it for at least 60 days, and then reap the benefits of it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for a quick speed dating of these amazing herbs that we have. They are of great benefit to us, and I can't believe it. Here we are at the end of the show. We had some great questions come in, guys. We will touch on those next and soon. But for tonight, Bart, our best question, our last question, here we are. What is one step that people could take even today towards becoming superhuman?
Mm. So I think after having this conversation, I would say just continue to remember that the body, health is simple. And I know we talk about it all the time, but health is simple. And the reason that it's simple is because everything about the human body was designed to help you heal. If you cut your finger, everything is working for you. If a bad guy comes in your eye, your body has a defense mechanism. If something's not going right, it gives you a signal. It's a symptom. But revisit that conversation with yourself and with your higher power about how incredibly powerful the human body is, just so you give yourself a little credit for when you do run into a little trouble, that you got this.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight at the Health Made Simple show.
And of course, thank you guys for tuning in. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading the love. If you do follow us on Spotify or Apple, leave us a rating. That's apparently, it helps really good. So give us a great rating over there. We appreciate you. And of course, continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, your overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.